right, good evening. I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled Town of Haymarket Planning Commission meeting for Monday, April 19, 2021. Roll call, please.
Weir.
Here.
Mason. Cottle.
Here.
Howard.
Here.
Bayene.
Here.
Correll.
All right, please stand, pledge allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. You may be seated. All right, first up, citizens' time. Any citizen would like to come address the Planning Commission, please come to the podium.
Dottie
Rostrum
Leonard,
and
14801 Washington Street, and I couldn't wait to get here. Because you can't talk when you all are talking or thinking out loud or whatever you do up there, but I can tell you that I was on the town council, liaison to the planning commission. How do you turn that down?
Just don't talk so far into it.
Oh, that would be my pleasure. When the historic overlay was determined, it had nothing to do with Disney. Disney was already gone. We were trying to preserve our town. And it also had nothing to do with Little Brick Ramblers, because it was clearly stated that we wanted houses that were over 50 years old at that time, and the Brick Ramblers were not. And I agree, I hate to say it, with Bob Weir, but I agree with Bob that even though the Brick Ramblers are around, and I lived in one myself for 30 years, but they were not old and historic then. It was mostly the houses on Fayette Street, and we had an architect appointed to the ARB, and that architect gave us advice about historic looking signs. The idea was to build back a town. The block that has those two little Ramblers on it was all like the first two houses. They were like detached townhouses, tall and narrow. That's what was there. And it looks like somebody, the people who opened the little wine tasting place, did what Bob suggested. They hooked a trailer to a house in Italy and brought it over and sat it down on that street. It doesn't look like it even came from Fairfax, but it's here, it's lovely, it just doesn't meet the historic overlays requirement for everything to be colonial. And I didn't come up with it. The great, wonderful, faithful ladies who wrote that historic book over there and served on the Historic Commission, not the Historic Foundation. The Historic Foundation was just for the purpose of spending the funds that Jack Cap, as mayor, had gone around and collected. And it took us nearly 20 years to get the money that he collected because it was hidden somewhere by a former mayor who had been on that foundation. So I'm saying that to say, if you're going to do anything with the historic preservation of the town, it either needs to be all of it or none of it, because we're at the point where so many things have been destroyed already, and the ARB has not been sticking to the town's guidelines that they gave to the ARB with that architect, and he was trying to make sure that things were done right, and they got rid of him because he didn't approve one person's shutters. I have some of those historic shutters under my house. I would have given them to her. I don't understand why we got rid of an architect because he didn't live in town. Our lawyer doesn't live in town. The planner doesn't live in town. None of our consultants, our engineer doesn't live in town. So we either need to put an architect on the ARB and do it like the guidelines said, and it doesn't do any good to keep reaching out to other towns when we had our own guidelines right here and we aren't supporting them. So I'm just going to bring a bunch of those people to the next meeting that were serving at that time and let them tell you all what the facts are. The facts are what I just stated to you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, anyone else? All right, seeing none, we will close citizens' time. Minute approval from work session March 15th, 2021, 6 p.m. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Planning Commission regular meeting, March 15, 2021, 7 p.m. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on, agenda items, ETA discussion continued. And I would like to, if there's no objection, since we've had several planning meetings in a row and the last couple have run pretty late, if we can get everybody out of here no later than 8 o'clock, as long as we can get our business done.
That's fine.
In that case, can we move CIP first
Yep.
with Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If we could move the CIP first so we can dispense with that and then use the remainder for.
So the document I passed out to everybody, including the audience members, is the capital improvements draft plan. This is something that we do each year during the budget season. We update the CIP, present it to Planning Commission, which then makes a decision on it and presents it up to the town council. So this is kind of a draft that we have started on. You will see some of the items that we have put here. Please take a moment to briefly read through it, and then I will go through and discuss it with you. So up first, we have the Washington Street beautification. This is just a group name that we call it, but this is items that are in need of repair, maintenance, additions there along Washington Street. So we have included the painting of the light posts. This is something that will need to be done coming up soon for our oldest post. So we will look into how we can best go about doing that. The additions of benches, pads, trash cans, bike racks, that's something that we're always looking at doing. And then we also have crosswalk repair on this item as well, Bob.
I would suggest that we strike painting of light posts. Painting of light posts is a maintenance issue, not a CIP issue. And I would simply make that line, light posts, comma, benches, pads, trash cans, bike racks, and then move the funding from line 2 and add it to line 1 so that you've got one line item that would read 25,000, 5,000, 5,000, 25,000 across it. The painting of the light posts is a maintenance issue, which we should have built into our maintenance budget. At least on that would be my suggestion on that section. And I have a question on that. As I recall, light posts were proffered in front of the Bloom Building that do not exist and were not installed by the original applicant at time of construction.
That is correct. That,
Does the bond for that still exist, or was it released?
the bond for that does not exist currently. When that building went into foreclosure and the new owner purchased, at that time, there was nothing done in our records that show that council or staff at the time required that new owner to put those items in. There's missing landscaping, there's missing light posts, and I believe there is also a missing staircase that makes it easier to get up that grade. Because they have a small sidewalk in front of those entrances as well, and
So
it
that-
would connect the two.
So that's essentially on us.
That is
Alright.
correct. And I believe it is 3 light posts there.
3 light posts. When did that go into foreclosure, do you recall?
I'll have to look up the year.
Just ballpark.
2006-ish. I'll pull it up and let you know.
All right. But that bond issue essentially dates back to around 2000?
Correct.
All right. Great. Crosswalk repair. Since, in theory, VDOT's going to redo all of our crosswalks sometime soon, which ones are left to repair?
If VDOT does all of the ones that they had under contract, we, as the town, will need to look at, do we finish the entirety of the square at Fayette and Washington? Currently, we only have one that goes across the east side of the intersection, so closest to the museum, and then the north side closest to the Remax building. The west and south side do not have a crosswalk, so that is one that the town should look at.
Okay, so that's what the 50's for?
Yes,
Okay.
there's that, but we also had general repair because at the time, we were not aware that VDOT was gonna come through and do all of the paving and crosswalk work that they said they were.
So do we still need to earmark 50 for those two, or does it need to be
I
less?
would still earmark that much
Okay.
for those two. And also just a general update while it's on the discussion. VDOT has a contract for that crosswalk work. They're waiting on it to be bid on.
Is that gonna get done before winter, when they claim it's too cold to pave? Sorry.
Are there any other items the commissioners would like to look at adding to the Washington Street beautification line items?
No, you just said VDOT's gonna repave Washington Street.
So they just repaved Washington Street this past fall. When they did that, they ripped up all of our previous crosswalks, and they are going to be putting back in the stamped crosswalks in place of what's currently out there, which is high visibility. Those were put down just in the interim because VDOT told us it was too cold to come back and do the work at the time. And again, that was late fall.
Okay.
Did anybody have any objections to combining those first two lines? Okay.
So the 20,000 is moving down. I know she's moving the light post to the second line, and is the 20,000 moving down a
Yes,
line, or are you
so-
combining 20 and 5?
Combining 1 and 2.
I combined the two. If you look on the, I combined the two if you look on the screen over here, so that it reads light posts, benches, pads, trash cans. They're all there together. If there's no other items for Washington Street beautification, we can move down to the next line item and talk about the street sidewalks and parking. So currently, the town park does not have a sidewalk along its frontage connecting to Blight Drive. So we have earmarked this in the upcoming year and in the following. The reason the expense is so high, we need to have the plan engineered so that we do it properly. We need to take into effect that we have to install curb and gutter in this area along Washington Street. Right now, it's just a small gravel shoulder. We also will need to look at the stormwater management as it applies to this area. Currently, there's a swale down there, so that is something that will also be modified. And so engineering costs are there at $250,000. And then the actual construction and implementation of that plan would be at $750,000. We estimated these numbers based on our most recent project here, the Jefferson Street Improvement Project. We looked at the engineering cost for that, as well as the construction cost, and we simply did a little calculation based on the linear footage, and this is what we came up with. Again, we kind of estimated a bit high so that we could hit our mark. Go ahead.
I would just note that there's a good chance a lot of that will be covered by federal grant funding of some sort. A chance, not a guarantee.
Okay. The other item in this section is the Jefferson Street turn lane. And so this is, at the time, this is something we need to discuss. This is only taking into account the turn lane on our side. This is not taking into account the left-hand turn lane on the south side of the intersection. I think if we would like to add that in here, we should probably go ahead and do so and then designate them as the appropriate projects.
Emily, we don't have any engineering for that southern portion, do we?
The southern portion we do not. This portion up here on our side we do.
So we're going to have a significant expenditure for engineering that, and then we're going to have to accommodate the cost of the take for property on the east side, potentially,
Yes.
as well as because of the deal, or because of the manner in which the hotel was approved, as I understand it, we're responsible for the
There,
utility relocation of those 2 poles, or 3 poles?
yes, that is correct. As for the east side property takes, there's very, very little
It'll be minimal?
room that anything could be done, especially up against the old bank building.
So a preponderance of that will come from the hotel side that
So
we've
the
already
hotel,
secured?
the hotel has secured with the town an easement for this turn lane.
Will that align with
That
this
does,
side?
that is correct.
So we don't really have to worry about the east, it's
Correct.
principally the engineering and then
The way it was engineered is that on our side and their side, it lines up. It comes into our property, it comes into their property, thus they gave the easement for it. Because the old bank building cannot be moved, and there's only a very small row of shrubs right there, and then on the other side, you had very little room with the Red House Ordinary building.
Okay. But we're still going to be responsible for the utility relocation, which
That is
going to
correct.
be significant.
That is correct.
$1.5 million?
Yes. It will be very significant.
Much as I would love to stage it and do it all at one time, I don't know that funding that would be possible. So if we want to combine that, then we'd have to, I would suggest,
I would suggest we leave two separate line items, especially since our side, our right-hand turn lane, it has been engineered. We actually, myself and the town engineer 2 years ago went to the county requesting for assistance with funding of this project. We were turned down at the time. I think that's something that we can try again. So we have the engineering ready, we have the project the project applications ready. We just needed the funding assistance to put it out to bid.
so you want Jefferson Street turn lane north as one item, and Jefferson Street turn lane south as a second item?
Yes.
And then I would suggest to the commission that we plug in for the Jefferson, leave the north alone and plug in for the south, 1 million in 24/25 and 2 million in 25-26, even though the costs are going to probably increase above and beyond that, but at least we got to start.
I'm not sure if others are familiar with these, the turn lanes. So what is it exactly?
Give me
is,
1 second, let me pull up a map for you.
And since there's two of them, we may want to break it into 3 line items: sidewalk, north turn lane, south turn lane.
I need to get you a pointer.
There was one somewhere. Okay. So this is a zoomed in view of Jefferson Street and Washington Street, our property being here, the hotel parcel being over here. Old Bank Building, Red House Ordinary. So the turn lane that we're discussing will be right in this area along here. This is a project that has been engineered, and what this allows for is, as you approach the intersection, there will be 2 lanes. You'll have one for left and straight, and you will have one for right-hand turn. So this should significantly help with the sometimes morning, afternoon, all the time traffic that we get backed up along here on Jefferson Street. And then the same thing will happen over on this side, so the northbound side, where the hotel, you can see this blue line right in here. So there is an easement right in this area where the hotel has given the property in order for the turn lane to be mirrored on the other side, and so that this intersection capacity, the level of service will significantly increase from what it is currently at. So again, you'll have an option for your left and straight and your right turns. So again, this one is the one that we have engineered. We have the plan for. We have a rough construction cost from when that plan was designed and approved. We will need to, at this point, it's been 2 years, we will need to look if these construction costs have gone up and by how much. I am sure they have gone up. And then we need to get this portion engineered.
But the stormwater's already done for the northern section, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So based on what Mr. Weir stated earlier, sounds like for the hotel and another property now, the town is going to have to pay incur cost to address things.
I'll be blunt, it's not the way I would have done it. I would have worked it as part of I would have required it as a condition of the hotel, frankly, because the utilities should have been undergrounded anyway, and that's the big obstacle on that section. We're stuck with the overhead utilities because in approving that project, that requirement wasn't made. They magnanimously granted us the easement with the poles on. Actually, they deeded the property over, making the power poles our problem.
So we
Personally, it's not the way I would have done it. What's done is done. So
maybe we got outsmarted then, huh?
I think I'll get on my soapbox here a little bit. Everybody in this town pays dual taxes. Everybody in this town pays taxes to the county, pays taxes to the town. And to my recollection, in the past 20 years, not one single dollar of the county transportation budget or any of the supervisors' trips funds have been spent in this town. So I will do whatever's necessary to secure at least a portion of the funding from the county if possible. But at the end of the day, that's a board vote, unless the supervisor wants to, a supervisor, depending on which one. There are a number of reasons to approach two different ones of them. Wants to fund a portion of that out of their trips fund, which most times the rest of the board will acquiesce to that type of request. But I think the town is long past due for receiving a share of our tax dollars back, and given the circumstances, I would suggest this is the perfect project to try and recover some of those tax dollars from the county. We'll see how that plays out. I don't anticipate that happening in the next 2 years, maybe the next 3, more likely 4. I've reached out to Supervisor Canlin to have a meeting with county transportation and kind of float the idea of some general transportation improvements both inside and outside of the town, including this, and we'll see where it goes. They just haven't scheduled a meeting as of yet.
And these are estimates, right?
Correct.
Do they exist in the public domain? I'm assuming they do, right?
So once we get this, so you're asking if it's visible to the public?
Yeah, including bidders, potential bidders.
So that, yes, it will be visible to the public. It will be on the town's website. It'll be fully accessible. As for coming to, bidders putting in stuff, we have to have full bid packages and a lot of data into it. So for some of these, coming up 2022, 2023, for the turn lane, for example, a whole bid package will be put up on the website for bidders to view and put in bids.
We're going to do an ROI and an RFI, or?
I believe so on that project.
I mean, not an you know what I mean.
Yes.
ROI. RFI and RFP, sorry.
Are there any other questions or suggestions for street, sidewalks, and parking?
The reason I asked about that is can it potentially go against the town, knowing that potential bidders have an idea of what the town is estimating on spending on these various projects? Is there any adverse?
The CIP has no real bearing on, it's going to be a competitive bid package, so it's going to be, they're going to be competing against each other, and I'm assuming it'll be a sealed bid package?
Correct. So there could be a chance where, say, for example, the sidewalk park for engineering on that. We've estimated a certain number based on what we have seen in the past. It could come in 50,000 less than that. It could come in 50,000 more. This is very much so just an estimate. This is something we'll also run back through our engineer. I don't think it's going to harm us having this out there. It just kind of shows that we are going to be doing several very large capital projects. We will have to go out to bid for these. Once they get their construction list and everything that's in the site plan and they put together a bid package, we'll have a much better number as we work through these CIPs. So next year we could come back and the turn lane construction, we could have better information and say it's only going to be $1 million. So
Maybe I was looking at it from my profession because, and work in the contracting world, you know, federal government, for example, they don't put out there up to how much they're willing to pay for, you know, for a bid that they're going to be releasing RFP, RFI, what have you, right? So,
Unfortunately, I think we're mandated.
okay.
We're required by state code to do it. Quite frankly, I'd love just to put a CIP out there without a number in it for some things, but for budget purposes and transparency purposes, I believe we're required to put in something that's, quite frankly, not much more than a placeholder. I guess.
the next line item, we have the town center property. So the town center site plan has been worked on and approved as of 2017. And so this is a phase 1 and phase 2 look at doing the construction. This is something that possibly council will need to discuss more in depth of what the long-range plan is for this site here. Is it to do full curb and gutter, a nice parking lot, the front pocket park area, if you will, with the nice walk-up sidewalks and bench areas out front? Or is it to do the entirety of the building as it was proposed to include the elevator in the rear of the building, providing better accessibility to our upstairs units? So this is something right now I would say is a bit more of a placeholder, and I think council is going to have to really weigh in and see what the long-range plan is. But if the Planning Commission would like to make a suggestion or notes on this line item, please do so, and I'll add those in here for our discussion. If there are no ones to keep on our timeline, I'll move to the next one. So the next item is the Haymarket Community Park. So the town held several different charrettes and community meetings in order to come up with a master plan. They have a plan that was prepared, so the next step would be taking these visions, making sure they're up to date and current, and getting a master plan engineered into a site plan. Again, we have estimated a cost here for this upcoming fiscal year. And then we estimated a phased construction plan. The reason we phased it as such is based on the magnitude of what the original master plan included. So it included a full community center, pavilions, large play areas, a new parking lot, a new entryway, a new road to get through from the entryway over into the parking lot, going by the community center. So these are all items that we took into consideration based on the master plan that was prepared. Again, we need to reevaluate and make sure that this is still the long-term plan for the park, and that we would like to have it completed in the next 5 years. If the commission would like to weigh in, please do so. I think this will be an ongoing discussion as we keep moving forward.
This will run to some degree conjunctively with the sidewalk because you're going to have to engineer
That is correct.
the entrances.
correct.
Okay.
The original master plan idea showed that the far entrance kind of becomes an emergency access entrance, and then the main entrance there becomes of course, in and out, dual entry exit at the same time. It kind of curves over to the side, up in front of the building, and then goes back to where the parking lot currently is now, and then you would have a nice large parking lot that is paved.
Yeah, I think this is something we definitely need to get on, because we've had a lot of public weigh in on this, and we've spent, previous council, 2 councils ago, spent a lot of time on this, as did the planning commission. And I mean, we have made improvements with the playground, which has been well received, but the rest of it with the pavilion and amphitheater and things of that nature sat dormant. So I think we really need to get going on that.
Okay. I will take that comment and add it to our town council discussion for this item.
As far as the, as far as that community park, what is the cost of upkeep? The reason I mention that, like the flower beds back there along Villages of Haymarket, when the landscaping was put in, it's not maintained very well. You know, there's some trees that have fallen back there. Well, a tree that fell, it's still not been cut up. So, and there's some more trees that are dying back there. So I think it'd be a good idea to have somebody go through there and kind of look at some of the maintenance upkeep. I know it's not necessarily on the CIP, but you know, it does fit in with repair items.
Certainly. I will speak with our town manager about that tomorrow, the maintenance and getting it inspected, taking a look at everything. And then as for how much we spend on maintenance, that's something I'll have to work with the treasurer on to see how much we're dedicating to.
$20,000 annually.
There's your answer.
Huh?
Does that include all the trash pickup and?
That's strictly ground maintenance and repair for the community park.
Yeah, because
And it's
kind of
largely untouched at this point, so there's plenty.
kind of in a state of disrepair. There's a tree back there, it's been split. There's some metal sticking out of the ground from the old hair over laundry lines. That it has not been mulched. They edged the beds but never came in and did mulch. It basically becomes a weed mud fest.
On those backmost beds closest to the villages?
That, and then on the area that the trees up by the playground area. So you have to walk across the mud from some of the picnic tables and benches to get to the playground. I just think
Okay.
that whole area needs a good scrubbing, because kind of looks shabby at the present.
Okay, we will certainly look into that this week.
Thank you.
Any other items for the park?
I guess the last thing on the park, like the swing set, there's some pretty big ruts worn out there, so we need some more mulch actually in the playground area itself.
We just had our playground inspector come out, I believe it was last week or the end of the week prior, so he gave us an inspection report, and Chris is working on coming up with what items we need to have repaired and maintained.
Because that's been a big hit.
Yes. I think it will be this summer too, with the addition of the picnic tables and good weather. I think it'll be a great place. Okay, town signage. So this is for the Gateway Sign Program. I did reach out to a local business who did the sign program for the town of Leesburg and some other smaller towns. We discussed the different program opportunities, And so she was able to provide me with these numbers. And this is basically what they would do is they would come in and for 15,000, a maximum of 15,000, they would design an entire sign program to include smaller gateway signs, larger gateway signs, working with us on materials. They would work with the ARB and have a full comprehensive plan. The post and panel gateway signs, so these are smaller ones that would be on Jefferson Street as you come in either from Old Carolina northbound or southbound. Those would be 16,000, so 8,000 each. And then for the engineering and construction of the larger gateway signs, those are more of your monument signs that you see on the ground that have stone work, brick work, concrete work, any kind of work that would require an architect to come in and do the design engineering portion. Those would be 35,000 each. So at the time that we did this discussion about a year and a half, 2 years ago with the Architectural Review Board, it was desired to have 2 gateway signs, one on either side of town on Washington Street, and then have 2 post and panel style gateway signs on Jefferson Street. So you see those total costs reflected here. Again, these numbers probably have gone up as we've seen material costs go up. So this is our estimate currently. We can update it, but this is something that the Architectural Review Board has stressed as being very important to stay in our CIP, and something that we go ahead and work towards in the very near future. I do believe one item that Marchant would like to have added is some signage for Town Hall. That is something that we were going to discuss further with the ARB, if that's a general addition, kind of maintenance, if you will. We previously took down the old signs, or is that something that would need to be a CIP? So that addition may be added.
Did we take the sign down up front? I didn't even notice.
It's at least been 5 years since it's been down, but
Fine.
there used to be an old sign that hung above the doors that said Town Hall. And
Oh, I
had
thought you were
more
talking about the
information.
one out in the
No,
green
no,
space.
the monument sign is still up.
Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a CIP issue if you're just talking about building signage.
Okay.
To me, I mean,
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that? Okay, if there's nothing else for that one, the quiet zone. So the quiet zone
what about this
is,
National Historic Registry marker?
I was asked to take that out and put it into the regular budget line item for the museum. So that has been deleted.
Okay. I just don't know what it is, but okay.
We have to pay an annual due fee for our historic signs over at the museum.
That's our annual fee, yeah, then it doesn't belong in here. No.
Okay, the quiet zone, that refers to the train through town, taking the necessary precautionary measures in order to establish a quiet zone. You do have to do some expense here. It requires a certain amount of signage and other improvements to the railroad crossings, and so we have looked at adding that in for 2022 through 2025. Again, this is an estimated cost. We can definitely reach out to the necessary agency and determine what the actual cost would be. But this is something that a lot of our residents in the Green Hill neighborhood, all throughout town who back up to the train, have requested us to leave in and work towards.
For what it's worth, and a conversation I'll be having with county transportation, we are the, what is it called? The lead party. We're essentially we're taking the administrative lead on this and have for the past, I can't remember what the term is, signatory authority, whatever, principal authority on this. However, the county is getting some significant pressure from residents in places like Somerset. And I suspect that pressure will increase as the new houses are built off of the extension of Somerset Crossing Drive. And they do have some federal funds available to help us with this. So we're going to talk about bringing them in and subsuming at least a portion of the cost, if not, quite frankly, in my view, all of it. There's not a whole lot left to be done except for
We have,
electronics train signalization, some kind of signal they've got to have on the tracks. And I think we still have to upgrade the one crossing at Old Carolina, I think is the one that still needs work.
I believe, the Old Carolina one, and I do believe that we have to do some work to the one that's back by the storage lot.
I thought they had declared that a private crossing, and that was essentially cross at your own risk.
If we'll make sure to find that paperwork then that has that clarification.
I thought they had made some sort of improvement to that. I thought the tricky one was the one at Old Carolina, because it needed a new type of more secure gate, as I recall.
Yes.
Something like, at the time it was, I think, $250,000. I'm sure it's more than that now.
Is it so that the train doesn't blow its horn? I mean, what is
In
just,
Yes.
okay.
the way it was proposed is the quiet zone will extend from the cross. We had to wait forever for the grade separation at 29 when they built the bridge, and then so the quiet zone will extend from the crossing over 55 at Broad Run. What's that, about 3 miles out?
About 2-3 miles.
3 miles out. It'll extend from that crossing through town, through Gainesville. I think the next time you would hear it is sometime in Manassas. But it would eliminate one, two, three, four, at least four whistles at this point, or horns, or whatever you want to call it.
That quiet zone portion would be from about here, following the train tracks,
To there.
to well into over here. And then town being centered right there. So, we will leave that item as is. As we hear more from the county and any available funding, we'll keep the commission updated on that plan. And then our last two line items, at this time, we did not have any CIP items for the police department. This is something that the police department liaison, Mr. Morris, will be updating us on if there's any additions that need to go there. That'll come up for the town council discussion. And then at this time, we did not have any items for the museum CIP. We are working on some general maintenance items to include getting more information on the best way to repaint our caboose and get that looking nice. We recently had it repainted, but we need to reevaluate how it was done. So we're gathering more information, and we plan to do that as a regular maintenance item.
You want to back up to the PD?
Yes, I can.
We don't have to worry about security because we're funding that out of this year's money.
Correct.
So we're dropping 10 grand on that. We don't have to worry about the MDAX because, again, we're paying for that out of this year's budget monies. That's another, did we buy 2 or 3? I don't remember. I know they were $5,500 a piece or something like that, so that we don't have to worry about that. The only thing that I would suggest putting in there, and not this year, but for 2022/2023, that's about the time we're going to probably need a cruiser. I'm not going to suggest buying 5 at one time again. The entire fleet will be paid for during the next fiscal during the FY22 budget, the last two payments on the 5. And there are vastly disparate mileages on those vehicles. Some of them have 50,000 more than others do. So I don't know that, I don't personally believe that we need to replace the entire fleet given the mileage, but I would suggest that we probably need to replace at least one in 2022, 23, and probably stick one in 23, 24 as well. And if we factor in trade-in value, I would just, for purposes of putting a number, put 35,000 for cruisers in the 22-23 line item and the 23-24 line item, and leave the rest of them blank.
I mean, how many officers do we currently employ?
At
Full-time,
present-
part-time?
At present, there are 2 full-time and 1 part-timer who is all but, no, 2 part-timers, right? 2? One of whom is all but full-time for the moment, and we are in the process of hiring new ones.
So we've lost a lot of officers here lately.
And we have lost 1, 2, who am I missing?
We've lost Officer Hood, Lieutenant Shaver. Officer O'Neill left
A year ago.
a year ago.
Chief, so 3 in the last 7 months? No. Yeah, Hood left,
Hood left a month or 2 ago.
but he gave his notice, so I don't
know
remember.
those- I don't know those days.
But they're in the process of being replaced.
And currently, we have 2 full-time officers and 2 part-time employed by the town.
That is correct.
Which is one of the reasons I don't suggest putting anything for cruisers this year.
We're not putting miles on them like we were in the past, right?
No. Significantly fewer miles.
I think there's a sentiment by some people in the town that we're trying to defund the Haymarket Police Department. I've heard from several people walking the dog, questions pop up, so.
There is no intent to defund. There is no provision in either this year's budget or next year's budget to do that. In fact, 6 officers are budgeted for next year in the preliminary budget, which went through the hearing, or excuse me, the work session last Monday, I believe.
I think it needs to be clearly communicated on our website, because that's not what the public sees. They see a lot of cruisers sitting and not being used, so I think we need to do a little PR work to let people know what's going on.
I will pass that on to the town manager, and share that feedback with him.
And you've got nothing for the museum?
Not at this time, no.
In that case, I would move we forward the CIP as amended to the town council with a recommendation for approval or adoption.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Weir,
I,
Puddle,
Yes.
Hallett,
Yes.
Piana,
Aye.
Correll,
can you see him?
Ayush, do you vote to move the CIP to the?
He's
town-
muted.
He said yes.
All right, let's table the ZTA discussion continue, because we still have several items here to go. And is it your desire to do another work session next month?
Yes, please.
All right, so what day are we talking about?
That will be on May 17th.
The
And
6th.
6 p.m.
And then the regular session at 7, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's go to old business, please.
At this time, we are working with Carter School to finalize the last engineering comments that we had. They will be fixing that and submitting their third submission. That should be before the Planning Commission in May for review and approval. Van Meter has started up on their construction this past week, so if anybody has any questions, please let me know. They should be finishing all of their blasting surveys this week. Drilling and blasting will take place next week and should be complete by the end of next week. If anything were to change, we will put that out. We will also be putting that out on our Facebook and our website so that as residents hear these loud noises during the daytime, they can check, see where everything is happening. They can always call Town Hall. We'll have the most up-to-date information. We can also send out the text alert for that. So if you're back in those neighborhoods, though, please feel free to share with your neighbors as you see them. Just kind of give them that heads up that that's going to happen. And that's all I have for old business at this time.
I have a question. Are they
Yes.
funding that sidewalk by Huntington
On
Path?
Hunting Path, that is part of the project that they're
Oh,
going to put
okay.
in. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. And they'll have lights down there, nice landscaping. It'll all be part of their plan.
All right, new business.
New business, this is kind of an old and new business update. Crossroads Village will be at the May 3rd Town Council public hearing for the 2 SUPs that they came to the Planning Commission for back in March and February. Other new business, Chairman, I will work with you. We need to have a prepared annual report to submit per the state code. That is due in by June. And then also, I just wanted to give everybody an update. I have an architectural review board meeting, but our town manager will be going down to the Prince William County Planning Commission hearing on the data center on Wednesday. He will be presenting our comments that the commission discussed and sent over to the county for that application. If you have anything else, though, that you'd like to add or any other comments, questions, please let me know. That's again on Wednesday night, the 21st.
And that's the property over here where Cat Harpin ties into 55, correct?
Yes.
So they're proposing to build a data center in there.
That is the one that is Village Place, so it is the one that's across on the south side of
Right.
Route 55.
On the land that's had the restaurant for
You are correct.
the last 15 years.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, what,
The
do we have any general idea what the County Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, the whole western part of the county going to become data central? Or seems like they're starting to encroach us from every side.
You have the most insight on.
I mean, we're
That
worried
would,
about.
that would certainly appear to be the
Yeah.
intent, which is going to make life interesting. If you can blow that out a little bit.
I mean, we're worried about preserving a historical district, which I'm in favor of, but in the meantime, we're being inundated by
Is that too far?
No, that's fine.
data centers.
If you look at the intersection of 29 and 66, where the commuter lot is, there is, yeah, right next to, right across from Conway Robinson Park, right there, that parcel right there. A little over a year ago, the county approved a data center complex for that particular site for several million square feet of data center. At the time, and this was at the beginning of the construction of the Haymarket hybrid line that runs across the frontage of that property, at the time, there was a question with respect to how they were going to power those several million square feet of data center. In approving it, the applicant asserted that they would draw a significant portion of the required power from the as-yet-to-be-built power line that is now built, at least in front of them, and the underground is being completed. Judging by the numbers that they gave at the time in terms of the megawatts they were going to require to power that facility, strictly tapping off of the underground line was not going to be sufficient to power, I think, what was it, 2.4 million square feet of data center, I believe it was, something along the magnitude of that. And they claimed that they were going to tie into a north-south power line that runs from 234, that runs right across the corner of the or runs right up the side of the battlefield. So in theory, let me try to make this real simple. The power line that's being built along 66, both above and below ground, is limited to roughly 120 megawatts of draw, where you can have 300 megawatts maximum per substation. 300 is already accommodated for at the Amazon facility. A significant portion, if not all of the rest of it, is accommodated at Gainesville Crossing. Since that time, there are 3 applications in place. One for the parcel on the south side of the intersection of Kidharpin and 55, and then one each on both the east and the west side of Kidharpin. As I recall, the 2 smaller ones, including the one that's going to be heard on Wednesday night, are for roughly 240 megawatts apiece. Because you can't do one substation to serve both, that will require 2 substations to facilitate that draw. So even if Gainesville Crossing didn't suck up everything, those 2 would suck up what's left, and then you have the larger portion to the east of Kidharpin, which is 4.5 million square feet on the old Lerner property. The 2 smaller parcels do not incorporate a substation on their site, so I don't know how they're going to get the power there. The larger portion, the larger parcel with the 4.5 million square feet, has a transfer station built in to where it transitions from above ground to below ground, so they could put a substation there. There was a Zoom conference, a couple of people from the town were on it, a variety of civic groups, builders, data center operators, lawyers, the county staff, Dominion Power, and some others were on a fairly lengthy Zoom call a couple of weeks ago. And the crux of it is this. Until an application is actually filed by whomever's going to construct the building, as the regulatory process stands right now, Dominion Power cannot and will not tell you how they're going to supply power to a particular data center. Data centers being considered bulk load customers because they require power in the tens or hundreds of megawatt requirement. So it essentially becomes a race to see who builds first. The Gainesville one is already entitled because they've gotten their rezoning. The Gainesville Crossing one over by 29. It is not, in my view and in most others' views, possible to power that site and the 3 at Dominion, or the 3 at Kidharpin, and the Amazon site from one power line, or from the Haymarket underground line. Therefore, they're going to have to draw. Dominion all but admitted this. I mean, they kind of hedged on it a little bit, but if you read between the lines, it will. At least one of those will require another transmission line. The applicant for the one that's going before the Planning Commission on Wednesday has committed, actually proffered, that it will not seek a data center permit if it requires a transmission line from the west through town. Great for us. The problem is, in order to service that, actually any of those three sites, the power is going to have to come from someplace, and I suspect it's not going to come from the underground line, except maybe a portion of maybe the Lerners because they own the property. Therefore, it will necessitate it coming from one of three directions, either from somewhere along the 234 corridor on the bypass, give or take around the intersection of 234 and Balls Ford. It'll probably require the construction of another substation because I think the Gainesville substation is tapped out in terms of capacity, or it will come from the New Road substation. This is just my take on it. Or it will come from the New Road substation in Loudoun County, which will necessitate a transmission line down one side or the other of Route 15, either crossing Bull Run Mountain through all of the residential neighborhoods there, and then ultimately either through, actually would have to go through Dominion Valley. When they did this a couple of years ago for Amazon, they had several routes planned, some of which would be on the east side of 15, going through Piedmont or Heritage Hunt or anything like that. Because of some legislation that was adopted 2 years ago, anything that comes from the north cannot cross the Haymarket Underground line. There is a statutory prohibition in place right now on any new transmission lines crossing the Haymarket line or coming in close proximity to, in quotes. Nobody's defined what close proximity to means. So if one comes down from the north, it would necessarily have to swing west of the Amazon site and then come back in, for lack of, for illustrative purposes, perhaps along the railroad line in town. They've committed to not doing that. That doesn't mean Dominion won't present that as an option. The only other two options, like I said, come in from 234, somewhere off of 234 and Balls Ford area, which would necessitate going through probably residential neighborhoods, because I don't think they have the ability to bring it up Wellington, leaving the only other option to bring it up from the Wheeler substation, which is off of Van Hill Road, which would require it to swing across Lake Manassas through Lake Manassas, Virginia Oaks, Somerset, any number of other residential neighborhoods, or swing it up 15 close to Buckland and Cerro Gordo and up that way. None of them are palatable. So the county has to make a decision on Wednesday night, and this sort of comes back to where we were several years ago with Amazon. When Amazon was approved as a data center, the county ordinance allowed data centers everywhere in every district except residential districts in the county as a by right use, which is how it ended up out where it's at with no existing infrastructure. In response to that, and a lot of input from various stakeholders. I was involved in it, the coalition was involved in it, the data center operators were involved in it, Dominion Power, their lawyers, the county staff. A data center overlay district was crafted to limit data centers without a special use permit, as a by right use, to a specific area of the county to avoid problems like this with the infrastructure. There's also a water infrastructure issue, but that's another. That just makes it even more complicated. These three proposals, including the one on Wednesday night, are outside of the overlay district. So the threshold question that needs to be addressed is, will the county put the residents of Western Prince William County in the same position they did when the Amazon project was allowed? Understanding that at the time Amazon didn't require approval. It was a by right use. It just sort of took everybody by surprise. Now they're doing that. Now it would be a willful act by the county to put the residents in that same position. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea for the residents. I don't think it's a good idea for the town. I think it's a horrible location for it, and I have grave concerns about the routing, and what the impact will be on residents, their property values, a variety of other things, and then there's the question of who pays for it. If the county sticks us in that position, there will probably be another fight similar to the one with Amazon. I think the same parties will become respondent parties to the SEC hearings that will be required. And then it gets really interesting with respect to where it goes from there. Does it go to court? Does it go to the Supreme Court? Does the SEC mandate that the bulk load customer, in this case the data center, pay for not only the transmission line but the cost of burying it? And you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. It's all an unknown, but it will place, there will be significant questions and problems if this data center is approved, regardless of whether it actually ever gets built or not. So I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's asking for trouble for the county to do it, but they seem hell-bent on pursuing data centers. I could go on forever about the future of data centers in their current configuration, but I don't want to take up all your time with that. That's another issue.
Yeah, let's wrap up. I
Yeah,
appreciate
so
the update. I mean,
that's-
suffice to say, we're dealing with data centers again.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any ARB update? Ayush?
Since he was having a little bit of issue with the meeting, I'll just say the ARB will be meeting this coming Wednesday. We have one application, and we will be working on the new items for the zoning ordinance as well as their guidelines.
All right, thank you. All right, town council updates.
We have covered virtually every issue in the course of other discussions, so I've got nothing left.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all right, thank you.
What do I need to do to dump out of here?
We don't want to turn into loud.